Yeah, and the one point I would add, comparing A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, he's just a lot younger. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd much rather give a guy a second contract than a third. So we'll see how it works out for Adams and Tyreek Hill. They're obviously fantastic players. I don't think the Eagles are going to be a quote unquote passing team. I think they might be a little bit more balanced this year. They certainly have the weapons to do so. I mean, I think Quez Watkins is going to end up being one of the best number 3 receivers in the league. You see what he did last year. Last year was his first year really playing. He barely played as a rookie. Last year, he made a lot of plays.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365. McMullen and McDonald, joined by our first guest, who in one way is a lot like John and myself. He's got a lot of different gigs. In other ways, not like us at all, in that he actually played in the National Football League. McMullen and I never got that close to the field unless we had a mic in our hands. Former NFL player, jack of all trades, Eagles preseason host of the Ross Tucker podcast. Ross Tucker joins us here on Birds 365. How you been, RT?
I am doing awesome. Jody Mac, John Mac, appreciate you guys having me on.
Our pleasure. Thank you much. All right. As a former offensive lineman in the National Football League, start here. Who's going to be the Eagles starting guard come opening week of the season?
Yeah, I think it'll be Sayamalo. I'd be surprised if it's not. I think something probably goes wrong if it's not. I think it's Dickerson and Sayamalo, obviously. Sayamalo, I thought, was always pretty solid. His issue has been he's not elite like some of the guys around him, right? I mean, he's always been next to Kelsey or Jason Peters or Lane Johnson. And so he's never kind of gotten the same love, and he shouldn't because he's not an all-pro or Pro Bowl caliber player. But I think they'd rather have Sayamalo start. First of all, I think he's probably better than Driscoll. Secondly, Driscoll's valuable as a guy that can back up a bunch of spots. Driscoll kind of reminds me a little bit of the career I carved out for a while, in that he's able to kind of fill in at a number of different spots. He's not going to lose the game for you. They're comfortable with him in there. I think they'd prefer to have Driscoll as the next man up.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think it's unfair for Isaac, as you mentioned, Ross, in the fact that, you have Jordan, you have Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Landon Dickerson looks like he's on his way to being a star. And you get points knocked off because you're not as good as those guys. Well, look around the rest of the NFL as you get to see. There is a lot of offensive line deficient teams in this league. And the Eagles have the Jack Driscolls of the world, the Andre Dillards. You could argue Cam Jurgens, at least from a trade standpoint. They got a bunch of starting level offensive linemen in this league. It's a testament to Jeff Stoutland, but also, Howie and the personnel department to get these players in there.
They decided a long time ago that they were never going to be shorthanded along the offensive line. And I think it's smart because every year you see a few teams that have injuries to a tackle or two, or maybe their center goes down, and they're not the same. I mean, sometimes these teams can barely function with some of the guys they have in there at tackle. I guess the one thing that will be interesting about Isaac Sayamalo is just playing on the right side. I'm sure he's getting a lot of reps there. I'm sure he's getting comfortable over there, but we've really only seen him primarily at left guard. It's not as easy as people think. At different points in NFL games, or at least in preseason games, I got in at all 5 spots. And it's not as easy as people think to just switch sides. What I like about it is that he's probably been working on it all offseason, been getting all the reps there. So you think by the time training camp rolls around and the preseason games that he'd be pretty comfortable in that right-handed stance on the right side.
Ross, Howie Roseman kind of pulled the wool over all our eyes. During the offseason, before the draft, people ask, that there was some serious wide receiver talent that was traded in this league, including the Raiders and the Dolphins picking up 2 of the best wide receivers in Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. And Howie said, well, the rest of the league is zigging, I like the zag. And he does the exact same thing. He goes out, gets A.J. Brown, signs him to a big contract. at least financially, the biggest Eagle acquisition during this offseason. Are the Eagles ready to become a pass-dominant team after having the success they had last year in the second half, being a run-dominant team? How drastic is the change going to be in your eyes?
Yeah, and the one point I would add, comparing A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, he's just a lot younger. I mean, I'd much rather give a guy a second contract than a third. So we'll see how it works out for Adams and Tyreek Hill. They're obviously fantastic players. I don't think the Eagles are going to be a quote unquote passing team. I think they might be a little bit more balanced this year. They certainly have the weapons to do so. I mean, I think Quez Watkins is going to end up being one of the best number 3 receivers in the league. You see what he did last year. Last year was his first year really playing. He barely played as a rookie. Last year, he made a lot of plays for a guy that was a number 2 receiver on essentially the run heaviest team in the NFL. So they get a bunch of weapons. I think they'll be probably exactly where they want to be, closer to 50-50. But I certainly hope they don't get away from the run game. It was so dominant at times. It's really rare to see that. I mean, there were games where it felt like Jordan Howard was getting like 12 yards a carry. I mean, you just don't see that in the NFL.
Big holes, that left side, especially with Jordan and Landon Dickerson. I want to go back to what you said, Ross, about Isaac and taking a lot of reps and getting used to being on the right side. Well, no, he hasn't taken a lot of reps. And I want to get your thoughts as a former NFL player. And I think you started in 2000, 2001. So we're talking about 2 decades. So it's not that long ago. And the Eagles don't practice, Ross. I mean, they had 6 OTA practices, no mandatory minicamp. Now, we know there's no pads and all that kind of stuff. But as a guy, and I've talked to you before, and you like the physical part of the game. I think you've said you like the violent aspect of the game, which you're not allowed to say anymore. So I applaud you for that. What's your take on the Eagles scaling back off-season work? And by the way, training camp practices as well, in-season practices, they don't practice as long. What is your take as a former player on how they run things these days?
Yeah, I was born too early. I got to blame my parents for that one. No, I get it. There's major investments in these players, and there is a balance. There is a fine line, I think, between getting the work in that you want to get in, but also not wearing the players down and trying to make sure that they stay healthy, especially with the season being a game longer now. And I think every team, especially since this will only be the second year with the 17-game slate, I think every team's trying to kind of figure it out. It felt like last year, with COVID still hanging over everything, that there were sort of a lot of negotiations that went on between coaching staffs and veteran players. And I think what happened is, it seems like what happened in a lot of these instances, maybe the Eagles included, was that after they negotiated the plan for last year, I think that some of the coaching staffs thought it'd kind of be hard to kind of go back on that now and add more to it, especially when the Eagles had so much success in the second half of the year, and they did stay healthy for the most part, and they did seem fresher than the other teams they played against. After all these years of all the Eagles' injuries, it was kind of nice to see them be one of the healthiest teams in the NFL, though that is one of my concerns this year because, it's a law of averages thing a little bit.
Yeah.
Ross, we enjoy when we get ex-players on there because can ask you to look at it from an ex-player perspective, as John just did. Let me ask you about leadership. Everyone sings the praises of Jalen Hurts, that he's a take-charge guy and the guys all like him, and he is a guy who can motivate in the huddle. But then there's the actual production and making a play and throwing the perfect pass and getting the ball down the field. Which way does it play more heavily? Is it an attitude and a personality thing? Is it purely a production thing? Will players be led by guys who bring nothing to the table except the fact that they're great at what they do? Or can a guy who might not be up to snuff with the other quarterbacks in the league, but truly is a guy that players relate to and can connect with, can someone like a Jalen Hurts be that kind of a very good leader?
So, of course, it's a combination, but I would tell you there's sort of an inverse relationship between how good of a player you are and how much leadership capability that you really need. In other words, the better you are, the more guys will follow you, even if you're more deficient as a leader. Whereas the worse you are, you can be the greatest leader in the world. But if you're not getting it done and you're not the player they need you to be, it doesn't really mean that much. I remember one team I was on and the coach was talking. We didn't really have a great leader in the offensive line room. And the offensive line coach, I remember he's like, he named a couple guys like, you guys step up and be a leader. You guys, he's like, Tuck, you're a leader, and he didn't say it, but I knew what he meant. Meaning I was a leader, but I wasn't really good enough to be the leader. And it's true. It was true, right? Like in every meeting room for a team, every positional meeting room, O-line, D-line, receivers, right? You have to have a certain level of years in the league combined with production and starts, and then the leadership capabilities, which is why a lot of teams try real hard to make sure they've got one guy in each meeting room that they want to be the guy that the other guys look up to and follow.
Ross, I know you got to run pretty quickly, so I want to get this question into you. We talked about A.J. Brown a little bit. A lot of big name additions to this team. James Bradbury, draft. You have Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean. Everybody's excited about that. Howie Roseman doesn't get credit for those extensions, though, in season last year when he locked up Jordan Mailata, when he locked up Dallas Goedert, Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox. Everybody kind of forgets about that. So I want to know biggest Eagles extension of those four, or Ross Tucker doing the Eagles preseason games. That to me is the biggest one. And congratulations.
Well, and in fairness,
by
the way, John.
Yes. Preseason. Yeah.
Well, I didn't sign that with Howie. And certainly wasn't as much money as those other guys got. But you guys know I'm from Reading, grew up a diehard Eagles fan, so I love doing the preseason games. I think they're a blast, because it's the Eagles broadcast, and you know who you're talking to. It's Eagles fans that are the ones watching. So it's really cool for me. Really cool, for somebody from Reading, right? Because so much of stuff's downtown Philly and the Philly suburbs. I think the people from Reading really appreciate that one of their own is the guy doing the Eagles preseason games. And I certainly feel that. I would say this, though, in fairness to Howie, no team fan bases give credit when a team extends their own guys or re-signs their own guys. They don't count. Those free agents don't count. And the biggest one, it's either Mailata or Goddard. I think both those guys would have gotten paid a tremendous amount of money on the open market, which is why Howie Roseman did those deals when he did. Frankly, all four of those guys would have gotten more money if they had waited, whatever it was, 10 more games, 12 more games, which is why Howie Roseman and the Eagles did the right thing of locking them up and taking some of the injury risk off of those guys. But Mailata, with the year he had and the upside, he would have gotten a crazy contract.
Yeah.
And a good job by Howie getting it done. All right, one more football question. Again, tapping into your former expertise as a player and a leader, even if you weren't quite good enough. You needed to figure out ways to be able to get your job done if you weren't quite good enough. If you had to go up against a guy like Jordan Davis, who is not only a talented player, but a man-child that is young and huge and strong, and you're not quite as big, but your job is to make sure he doesn't kill the quarterback. What is he going to be looking at this year when he's on the field? What will teams do to make sure this first-round draft pick of a rookie on a championship defensive line on college doesn't come into the NFL and have that kind of success right off the bat for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think you just change things up on him and you test him and you see how many different techniques he's comfortable going against, right? So you can jump him, which a lot of guys in college don't get very often, which is rather than setting back to pass protect, you go hit them right now. Because a lot of times they're not really expecting that. There are other things you can do with your hands. You know, if he looks like he's going to really fire off, you snatch him, which is you basically pull the front of their jersey down, right? Because they're leaning forward. You see a guy like that, we just used to snatch him. So he's going to learn some things the hard way, but you can't teach what he has. And I wouldn't be looking forward to it. That's for sure. I mean, you know, I know the way my back and neck feel right now after, 43 years old. It's just not good for your body to hit a human being like that. Yeah. I mean, that's just not good. Right. And I love the rotation of four guys because they're going to really be able to get him to be super fresh. Almost going to be like the Flyers, right? It's going to maybe a wrong time to bring up that team, but it's going to be like a line change, right? Where they only want Jordan Davis to come in for 2 or 3 plays, and during his shift, you just go, and then we'll get you out, get you a blow, and then we'll bring you back in for another shift.
Yeah. By the way, Lane Johnson, phenomenal at that snatch move you're talking about. He's one of the best.
I wasn't as good at it as I wish I had been, but I had crazy short arms, which makes that harder. Lane's a total freak of nature with how athletic he is, how long his arms are. I hate guys like Lane. I love you, Lane. I'm kidding. I love you, Lane.
He'll be over the bro barn before you know it. All right. Last thing before we let you run, and I reached out and asked you to come on the show because we hadn't had you in a while. I didn't even realize it was Father's Day week. I know you've done work with a company over the last couple of years. For those who are now days away from needing to come up with a Father's Day gift, remind us again about My Front Page, the company you've been doing some work with for a long time.
Yeah, it's myfrontpagestory.com. And what's funny about it is more than any other holiday, people don't even know Father's Day Sunday. Like, why do we get the short shift?
We always get it.
Nobody even knows that Father's Day is Sunday. Here's what I do know. Everybody watching right now, everybody listening, your dad loves the newspaper. He does. Every dad loves it. They just do. Get him a story that's about him. It's a cover, so it looks like it's on the cover of like the Daily News or the Inquirer. It's beautiful. You and your siblings can give some quotes about how great of a dad he is. I'm telling you, your dad, like his eyes will fill up when he sees it and starts reading what you guys say about him. Trust me, myfrontpagestory.com. Best Father's Day gift I'm aware of. myfrontpagestory.com.
And your point about, I don't think you've ever gone down this road with me before, goes over generations. Because you're right. This year, the new generation, the newspapers, what the hell's a newspaper? They don't even know what it is, let alone that they're going to get one for their dad. You're right. It has even better selling power on Father's Day than ever before. Ross, great stuff. We appreciate you catching up with us. We'll try and get you on once the preseason starts, once you go back to work. One of the 17 jobs that Ross has, but the one we appreciate the most when he does the Eagle pregame shows, preseason games. Ross, thanks for hopping on with us. Good catching up.
Sounds great, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Ross
Tucker. The Ross Tucker podcast.
Yeah.
Eagles.
At Ross Tucker NFL on Twitter.
He does a good job on Twitter and on his podcast and doing things for Westwood One and the Eagles preseason games. Yeah, he's got a lot of gigs because he knows exactly what he's talking about. And we tapped into his offensive line expertise here today. We hope to get Ross on the show down the road again somewhere in the season. All right, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, your Mac and Mac guys. We'll come back. Got a good guest hour number 2 as well. Jeff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com will hop aboard. So stay with us right here on Birds 365.